All right. Thank you, Sharon, for having the Broomfield Library come talk about our experience around becoming a fee-free library for children's materials. And I have with me today two of our library board members, Julie Twiss and Aiden Edgar. And I will let them introduce themselves to you and how long they have been on the library board for Broomfield. Aiden, go ahead because you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm Aiden. I've been on the Broomfield Library Board since May of 2022. I'm a member of the youth community in Broomfield, so I've been serving as the one of the youth members on the Broomfield Library Board. And additionally, for the last 2 years, I have been the secretary of the Broomfield Library Board.
Hello, I am Julie Twiss, and this is my second year on the library board in Broomfield, currently serving as the vice chair, and I'm excited to be here today. Thanks.
So we started on this journey a little while ago, and want to kind of walk you through what that looked like. In addition, our staff members will be discussing this at Cal on Saturday from a staff perspective. But we wanted to do a separate webinar based off of kind of the perspective of trustees and directors and the kind of questions that might be of most interest to those groups. So a little background, Broomfield is a city and county, the only other one besides Denver, in the Front Range of Colorado. We are a pretty homogeneous community. As of 2021, we were at 74,000. We're more than that now. Majority white, but having a lot more of our programming geared in Spanish, as well as making sure we have staff members that speak Spanish fluently and are native Spanish speakers. Oops, sorry, you went a little far. So in our working and outreach with the community, we really began to notice the discrepancies. Even though we're a majority affluent community, there are pockets of our community that are struggling, and particularly not in our library. And as we were doing outreach in some of these schools, we were having conversations with the students, and we're starting to get feedback around why they are not using the library. And so that was part of what began our journey. And this graph shows particularly the two major outreach areas that we have, both of which are over 15% poverty rates, and it's where our two Title I schools are in Broomfield. So we do a lot of programming in those areas. We are a standalone public library, serving all the city and county of Broomfield and neighboring communities. We have been for many years a Family Place Library Network member, which means that we really try to have services that meet the needs of the entire family, and think about how we outreach to children and work early literacy perspectives with the whole family. We became fine free in 2019. And then in January 2022, we went completely fee and fine free for children's items. Oh, I'm having trouble with only doing one slide at a time. So some of the community engagement and the feedbacks that we had in going to community food share, Centennial Elementary, we have outreaches to various mobile home communities. And as we spoke to especially Spanish speaking communities, their notions of public libraries and fees associated with them became a real barrier to access, to the point that one of our librarians was with a group of third graders, I believe, and was talking to them about all the books. They'd just done a book talk, and the kid raised their hand and said, so is it completely free? And, you know, at first the librarian was like, yeah, like we don't have any fines if you return your library book. But then the kid asked about, what if I rip it, or I lose it? And she said, no, there will be a charge for that. And that kid's face just fell, and they said, I can't come then. And that like really lodged in our children's librarian's heart, and began the discussion around what does this look like? How do we make this happen? What are the budgetary ramifications? And then how do we work with our library board to decide if this is the direction we want to go? So the intention behind the change really was that we began to realize and collect the data that the fines and fees disproportionately impacted lower income families, and those who are unfamiliar with how to use the library and what happens at a library, and what that looks like and the repercussions for their family. We also knew that children are a unique demographic who cannot control when they get to the library, and how often. So we were seeing, especially these kids from the school visits, they would check out the books from us when we visited, but then they were not sure when they could get a parent or guardian to get them to the library to return the books. And so we realized, man, this isn't working. We've got to rethink what this looks like. And our expected outcomes as we started on this, and the intention we had was really to increase the inclusivity and welcoming nature of our library. It was also really trying to have an equitable access for our entire community, develop the trust with our underserved communities, and gain more positive relationships with the children, the families, and the schools, frankly, that could use some help for providing services to families. Oh, I am missing oh, there it is. So in spring 2021 is when the staff got me fully on board with this decision as the director. And then it was summer that we went, after several meetings with the library board, and got approval. And then we had to go to our city council because it was actually in code. So we got the approval from city council in November of 2021. And then we actually became fee-free and were able to waive past fees for our patrons for children's materials only in January 2022. So a little bit about some of the information that we gave our library board prior to making this decision. The orange bar here is our entire budget, operating budget. And then the light blue amount was the total amount we were billing for children's materials. And the darker blue was the amount that we were actually collecting. So the long and short of this is that it was a very small percentage of our total operating budget. So the impact as far as us being able to manage our budgets was small compared to the impacts we were starting to really hear from our librarians that were doing outreach about how it was affecting the use of the library. In addition to this, the way as a municipal library, our fines and fees worked is those go back into the general fund and do not stay with the library budget. So it was really about getting city council on board to that amount of revenue, you know, between 3,000 and 4,000 most years. 2019 was a particularly interesting year, and it was mostly because of a bunch of cleanup that happened in our system, and not because there was a sudden rash of people that did not return items. So what this meant as far as total number of items billed is, again, the 2019 with the cleanup was higher than normal, but an average year was between 200 and 300 items that were being damaged and then or lost and being paid for. And in the scheme of the total collection, again, it was less than 1% of items. So I want to turn it over now to Aiden and Julie to talk a little bit about the library board's views and kind of some of the questions that they asked. And Aiden, if you want to start first, and then Julie add in.
So one of the big things when we first had started having the conversation on the board in the summer of 2022, 2022, was it 21? I think it was 22.
2021.
It was 21. Oh, I have years off in my head. In summer of 2021, when we started talking about this in the board, it was originally brought to us as releasing fines and fees for the entirety of the collection, so including our teen and adult collections. And obviously, in the end, we ended moving on simply the children's collection. And that is because we were worried about including accountability for the adult collection. We worried that adults would think more critically about how they have a book, and if they didn't return it, there is no repercussion. So why would I return it? So taking that into account, we made the decision to not move forward at this point in time with adult and teen collections. And that's why when we eventually went to city council, we said, here's what we want to do. And because it was part of code, what we had them change is we had them change it in a way that made it so we gained the power to change later rather than going to them again. Because if we changed it so we didn't take the children's fines, but did take the adult fines, then if we later decided to additionally not take adult fines, we would have to go back to city council. So we had them write it in where it gave us the power to make the decision ourselves if we were to ever move to making the adult collection fees go away.
To Aiden's point about, teaching responsibility and, including accountability for the adult patrons. And to be clear, I was not serving on the board at the time of the vote, but I have seen the impact in the community and in, monthly reports. And I am completely on board and believe that it was a wonderful decision. But the concerns about, not teaching responsibility, and I believe a lot of those came from, council as well. One of the things that I think of for that is that, if you look at the mission of the public library, you see things like access and opportunity and connecting and creating and all of these, things. Nowhere in any public library mission have I ever seen
teaching lessons about responsibility. It's not who we are. It's not, you know, one of our core values. And it's honestly a little surprising to me how often it comes up, because things happen. You spill a drink, you know, things happen to books, and it is a burden disproportionately, as Catherine mentioned, on our lower income patrons, and can be a significant barrier. And I don't think I'm giving away too many state budget secrets when I say that, you know, the costs that we're talking about are roughly what we spend on, you know, office supplies. This is not a huge, you know, we're not taking away a revenue stream. So that's just kind of some of our thoughts and conversations that we've had as a board.
And we did receive numerous presentations from numerous of our staff members inside of the library. This was like a process of months where the library board heard presentations from people, saw data that Catherine so kindly compiled for us, the graphs that Catherine has just gone through. And over that time, we kept asking questions, asking for more data, more views, and eventually came to the decision that we were in support of removing the fines and fees. And part of hearing those staff stories was hearing that story from that staff member who talked to that child, and the child asked about fees, and she said, well, yeah, there are fees. And the child, they just kind of shut down, is what she said. They stopped engaging, and they lost all the engagement and excitement that they had built throughout the previous part of the presentation. And then also we were able to hear that the staff is like, we spend so much time going through billing and processing and trying to catalog, and we still catalog, of course, but we don't have to go through the extra steps of billing anymore for the children's collection, which was one positive that the staff saw, because it reduced staff hours on that. And Catherine, I don't know if you have this graph easily available, but that graph you showed the board at our last meeting about what we were spending on staff time to assemble the fees in accordance to what we actually got back. Do you have that available?
I do have that available, because I think that will be eye-opening for those of you who might be considering this and have some concerns. Every library is different with how they bill and process, but at least for us, I'll show you, it just doesn't make sense. So this is one of the graphs that Aiden was talking about, is just how much time, and this is a look back now, because we've had this for a full year cycle to be able to see what actually happened for our children's materials, and what that cost was to us to bill and process. So one of the items, and this graph on the side is just for children's materials, where in 2022, we would have had $3,052 worth of items that were billed. We dropped, when we made this change, we went ahead and dropped our collection agency, which was costing us $3,000 a year. And then in addition to that, we figured out that the amount of time that staff saved for not sending out the bills for missing items for children multiple times, the notes that they had to put into every record about each of those items. But instead, when they see a children's item that's damaged, it just goes on a shelf that then our collection person comes in, makes a decision. Yes, I'm going to get a replacement copy because it's still circulating well, or no, I'm not. And that savings of staff time over a year was $7,756. So basically, we were spending $10,000 to collect $3,000 in order with damage man. So this is, extremely compelling now that we've had a year to actually see what happened, to prove to us that it was the right move. In addition to that, and I did not pull this for this presentation, but I think it would be meaningful, would have been to show you the percent of new cards and that increase over the last year. And I did not do that, but it has been significant. So from the director's point of view, when we were making this decision, obviously that cost and impact to the city's budget was important for me to understand. The number of items that we were having lost and damaged each year and kind of seeing that track record was important. And then figuring out what that savings of staff time and dropping the collection agency, what that would bring for us. And then the other piece was those impacts. So even if it had not been economically a good decision, I would have been weighing that with, if the impact was great enough, that cost might have still been worth bearing. But once I saw that really we were spending, you know, dollars to chase dimes, it just made no sense that we were continuing to do that. And then the effects on our staff of constantly chasing down, making the phone calls, calling about damaged items, having those kind of conversations with people at the desk, recognizing what we do now, especially with our mobile home park, the real significant difficulties they have with transportation to our library. All of those factors were in there. The other piece that has been interesting to note is just the logistics side. So by going fine-free for all items, not just this piece that is about the replacement fees, we did notice that maybe books, especially hot titles, might come in a couple days later than they did before, because people know that as soon as they return them, their fine comes off. So if they're like almost done the book, they will keep an extra couple days, but it was not significant. It was not statistically significant, the length of time that people were taking to return books. As far as the damaged and men goes, for children's materials, those items are getting reordered and back on the shelf a lot sooner, because that process where before we held it, had the whole discussions with the patron about replacement fees, etc., would have to go through its full course before that book would go to collection to be decided whether it was being replaced or not. Now that is happening multiple times a week. The children's collection person just comes, looks at the shelf, takes the items, buys the really popular stuff back right away. We have it back in, processed, and on the shelf within, like, honestly, a week and a half to 2 weeks. So that has had an effect that I wasn't expecting, to actually provide more access. And then we still will block cards if there are people that are abusing this and just taking out materials and never returning them in any state, or repeatedly having issues. Then we have the conversation with that patron directly, so that we have a way to handle a few bad actors. And honestly, it's like maybe 2 or 3 period. But in this way have been able to provide the access for all the others in a seamless way. So some of what I'm anticipating, the questions you all may have, is, do you still have accountability for library users? And as I was just saying, yes, we do still block cards if items aren't returned. And send the bills for the adults and YA materials. For the children's materials, we just send reminders that, hey, you haven't returned this item. If they've returned it and it's damaged, we don't do anything. We just go ahead and make the decision about whether to repurchase or not. So what's next? I mean, this is up to library board, so Julie and Aiden can jump in here, but I think it is likely that we will move towards removing damage men fee for adult and YA as well. The amounts are not as significant, but right now we would be spending this year about $7,219 in order to collect $5,843. So there's still a cost delta there where it doesn't make sense for us to continue charging damage men even for adult and YA. And where that figure is, the 5,000 is the amount of time spent by staff tracking, making notes, sending letters, and the phone calls. The 219 is we have a PayPal account that we would not need anymore, that people can use who want to pay remotely. And then the 2,000 is for the credit card readers in-house that we would not need to continue to have. So that's what those fees break down. And to Aiden's point, it would just be a library board decision because we, when we went to council the first time, what we put before them left the door open to be able to remove the damaged men from YA and adult in the future with an action of the library board. I think it's likely that we will still send them a communication so they know what's going on and why that decision was made. But we do not need their approval. And then
If I can interject.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to quickly say the figures that we've come up for the hours that staff is spending on providing the fines and working on that side of things is simply by survey, correct? Asking the staff like how much every day do you spend doing this, and then we added that up over the course of a year. We're like 15 minutes a day for this many staff members, and that's how we came up with that figure. We aren't just like watching our staff from behind
No,
a screen and saying, "Oh,
that
you're
is
working on this
correct.
now."
No, we got an estimation, and that's where it's so interesting because you know, maybe and it was when we asked them how much time they're spending still for the adult and YA materials, and it was about 15 minutes a day per staff member. So it's not that much, but when you add it up per year and for all 7 days of the week, by the average salary for their job description, it is significant. It's $5,000 worth over the course of the year. So it was surprising to me. I thought it would be a little bit of a cost delta in the other direction rather than a significant cost delta to it actually costing us more to collect the money. And it's even the little things like at the end of the night, we used to have to count down the money box because we were taking in significant amount of money. And so we had to get that counted down and put in the safe, which was the whole staff, because we all go out together, waiting 5 minutes in order for that task to be done each night before we could leave. So that cost alone, I didn't even figure in here, but we no longer do that because we take in so little money that can be dealt with by the office manager the next day rather than having multiple staff members have to count the boxes down together. And then we do occasionally have people that want to pay when they damage a book, and we do have an avenue for them to do that through the Friends Foundation for those who want to do so. So that is what we have to cover, and I would be happy to open this up to any questions you all might have for the library board members or for myself about this process.
Hi, this is Juliette Lundy. I am a board member of the Hugo Library. Apologize for being late. Of course, my Zoom wanted to update before I got started. I appreciate your information on here. I've actually been writing down. I'd like to know how we do handle fees and fines. I know me personally as a reader, I call over to the library and say, hey, just automatically renew me. I'm still involved in my book. But we are a town of 752 people, so our circumstances are a little bit different here. But I do appreciate you getting this information out because I would like to look up what the statutes are regarding, since we are attached to a municipality. Could you possibly re-give me that state information so that I can address it properly?
From the state library perspective, Juliet?
Yes, ma'am.
This might be where I jump in.
Okay.
This is Sharon Morris from the Colorado State Library. And there isn't anything in law about this. And so this is a local control issue. Public libraries and their boards and their local governance can decide whether they charge fines for late materials or fees for replacement costs and what the costs will be. So it's very much locally decided. I will say that the Colorado State Library has a standard recommendation that because of the barriers of fines and fees to children's materials, that our standard recommendation is to not charge fines and fees for children's materials. And while 90% of Colorado libraries don't charge late fines for children's materials, as far as I know, Broomfield Library is the first library in the state to stop charging replacement fees and damage fees for children's materials.
Thank you. I apologize for jumping in late. I just wanted to make sure that I got all that information. I appreciate it.
Sure. And Juliet, I can let you know from our perspective, it was in our municipal code what the fine and fee structure for the library was. And we did discuss with our attorneys before coming with this recommendation from library board to council. We actually took out the fines and fees section within the municipal code and instead had it basically read that library board will set fines and fees as needed or something relative to that. And we removed the whole, it literally used to say in the city's municipal code, a book is, you know, and we did this when we did the fine removal rather than the damage mend. But it actually said the exact amount. So every time that we made any change, we'd have to go to city council to approve that. So it depends on your structure and what is, if you're a municipal library, what it actually states in the municipal code about the library. It may not say anything about your fine and fee structure. So that would be something to look at first.
Thank you. I appreciate the direction.
I'd like to add that all of the conversations that we as a board have had around fine and fee removal have been overwhelmingly positive. It's easy to get on board once you decide to do it. I mean, there are a lot of logistical issues. We talk about how to do it and why to do it and why maybe this way or not that way. But I don't think among the board members there is any, regret, or maybe we shouldn't have done this, or now we have to deal with this. It's been an overwhelmingly positive experience for us. And earlier this summer, we had, I believe, a unanimous vote to move forward with doing what we need to do to put the things in place so that we can do the adult and teen materials as well. I'd also say that it can be daunting to look at your processes and the things that you're doing and the way that you're doing it. But it is a good time, even if you're not ready to jump on board yet. It's a good time to start the conversation, to pay attention, start gathering data. How much time does your staff spend on collecting fees? How many fees do you collect? How late are the books that, get returned very late? How many damaged items do you have? What is the usage pattern for your community? Go back a few years, start collecting that data going forward on your staff time and see what kind of an impact, these changes might have in your library. And honestly, I'd be really curious and interested to talk to anyone from any other library about their experiences and what they're seeing. So.
One question I have is, I know in some areas when they remove fines, they actually see more books get returned and more people coming into the library. And so I'm wondering, Catherine and the board members, if you can talk about any changes you've seen to engagement with the library in terms of gate count or return rates or circulation rates.
Yes, certainly the fine removal did impact the number of books that got returned, for sure, and the number of cards that were blocked, which did result in increased circulation. What this damage meant seems to have done that is in addition to that is number of new cards. So we're definitely seeing in our outreach events that the reticence some people had towards getting cards has been removed by removing damage men fees for children, so that we can with confidence say to them that you are not going to be charged to use the library, period, for children's. So that's the biggest change with this damage men piece. The fine piece was definitely an increase to overall circulation. We have seen no appreciable increase with this change to number of items that are damaged men. So it's not like suddenly people are treating the books differently. So that has not increased at all. And like I said, we have noticed we're able to get those books, especially the super hot titles, replaced and back on the shelf much more quickly with this methodology. It also has had the effect of our circulation staff saying they have much more positive interactions with patrons because they aren't handling those long excuses about, my dog ate this, or I don't know, that was damaged when I got it, and all the stories that you hear if you've ever worked in circ. They're very creative, and at least most of them are true. And they're just not even having those anymore. So it creates a better experience for staff. And I think our process was maybe more convoluted than some folks of the number of notes that we put in about each title. and then what we had to do on the back end for reconciliation. So I'd be very curious as other libraries do this and track the results to see what, if the time saving we're seeing is pretty much applicable across the board. I would suspect it's not horribly far off, but I also think that we might have had an overly laborious practice. Any other questions or thoughts any of you have?
I just wonder if each of you, the trustees and Catherine, if you could just say one takeaway that you've gotten from this that you'd like to share for other people to think about as they're moving forward with this kind of deliberation on whether to make this kind of policy change.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak up as a newbie here. Basically, I do not want to take away the joy that I see when a child gets their first library card by following up with a punishment conversation. And so I appreciate the movement on this. And I think it helps parents be able to teach within their home as well on how to take care of our library books. And of course, we always live by example. And so I appreciate this, and I'm ready to take this to the rest of the board members and find out how we do this and how we can do it differently if we do charge fines.
Yeah, the
I
Mancos Library,
think
they don't charge
in the process,
in the Mancos Library, they don't charge fines for late fines too. And I don't know about, they probably do charge for damaged books. So I will talk to the board and the staff and relay what you guys did, because it seems really cool.
I just want to do a shout out to, so the Broomfield City Council added youth members to our library board 3 or 4 years ago, and Aiden is one of the first folks that joined us, and we have 2 youth members, and they were really instrumental in this particular discussion and others discussions as well. And I would highly recommend looking at the possibility of adding youth members to your board. We have found that they read the board packets more thoroughly than some of the rest of us, and come ready to discuss and have a much closer and good viewpoint for what youth experience of the library is. And it was a really pertinent part of the discussion around access and usability with fines and fees. So I want to especially put a shout out for Aiden, who has been a huge piece of this discussion for us.
thank you, Catherine. I definitely think that part of the Broomfield Commission, the boards and commissions at Broomfield County, Broomfield, their motto is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And over the past years, they've been doing a good job at including a variety of backgrounds, races, etc. on the boards. But until they started adding these members, it was people, most predominantly people who have retired or people who are in their working careers, and that voice of the people in school are seeing the community from the lens of a youth member.
And Aiden, what do you think the value of this change to policy has been since you've been on the board for so long and you might have seen the shift?
Can you say the question again, please?
Oh, I was just wondering what your key takeaways with this change in policy to get rid of fees on damaged and replacement costs, what your experience of that is or what your takeaway is.
I think a lot of places in our society use financial means a reason of incentive to perform certain tasks, like turning books on time or high quality. I think we often forget that people, communities who are affected by these set questions, because if they were to accidentally have something happen, they know they cannot sustain to answer to such a fine. And so while it is a way of trying to ensure safety of the collection, it will just on other people and prohibit them and with me to participate in the activities and materials that are here.
Aiden, your mic seems to have quit on you partway through here. So we caught about every third word, maybe, unfortunately. Julie, did you read his mind or have a mind of your own to speak to Sharon's question?
Well, I have some thoughts. I'm not sure that I can interpret, but my general takeaway from this, seeing this roll out over the past, we're almost 2 years in, and the sky has not fallen. It's been positive. And I firmly believe that it is consistent with our mission and our reason for being. It's removing those barriers. It's providing access, especially to our youngest patrons and our, lower income patrons. I think it could and should perhaps be standard practice in the years to come. And I certainly hope so. But yeah, that's.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that Aiden was cutting in and out because I really liked his contributions so much. Thank you all for sharing these ideas and for discussing this important topic. I think you are on the forefront of where we need to go with libraries in order to really reach everyone in the community in ways that really will transform their ability to love reading and learning and making the library a more central part of the community and a welcoming part of the community. So any last things that you all want to say before we wrap up?
I think just as you all get back to your libraries, if your rest of your teams have questions or you want to shoot some our way, feel free to do that. I can put my email in chat so you can reach out, and just also the logistic pieces. If your staff have questions about how we did this, it isn't that hard, but there's some delicate pieces, especially if you want to go backwards or just want to start from whatever date you make this change active. So I'd be happy to answer any further questions as you get back to your boards and talk about them. And I know Julie and Aiden would be more than willing as well. So feel free to send things through me if you'd like. Oh, good. Aiden added some comment to cover what he was trying to say in the chat there.
So let's go ahead and read that aloud so that it's in the recording. So often our society places incentives to comply with standards on financial punishment. And often that acts as a deterrent of participation for people who cannot support such a financial punishment. So that deterrent is what we're trying to reduce. So thank you, Aiden, for articulating that in chat so that we could share what you were trying to say when you were breaking in and out. Well, thank you all. Wishing you well and look forward to continued updates on how things go in Broomfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.